Is the M2 Mac Mini base model worth it, and should you buy it? Let's talk about it. Welcome back to the channel. So if you watched my last video, which I'll put right here, you'll see that I actually talked about two different big YouTuber channels. One was Max Tech, one was Marques, Brownlee over here. They had different opinions on the M2 Mac Mini, and they, really Max Tech said don't buy the base model. Marques just said overall the M2 is a game changer. And after that video, after I put that out and stuff, I had a lot of views on it in the first couple days, maybe 5,000 or 6,000, and people started coming back to me saying, well, is this how you feel? Because I really feel the M2 Mac Mini is a great thing, the base model and stuff. So I just wanted to set the stage there. I want to let you know how I feel about it, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of talk about that right now, just to kind of make sure everyone knows how I feel about the base model. So in this video, I'm just going to set it up for you. I want to clarify my position on this. I want to show you exactly who the M2 Mac Mini base model is for, who should actually be buying this. And then number three, if you're going to buy either more RAM or more disk space, which one should you actually choose? I'm going to tell you that as well with some kind of findings behind it, just to kind of prove my point. So stay tuned for all those things. Let's get into it. All right, number one, how do I feel about the M2 Mac Mini base? I'm talking the base model with the 256, 8 gigs of RAM. I made a ridiculous Apple chart. Take a look over here. I call it the ridiculous Apple chart, right? Because they are. So look over here. Here's my chart. So what I think, and this is my stance on this, is if you look over here, this is your performance needs over here, and this is the percent of total Apple users. So if you look down here, percentage of Apple users is about 15%, and they, 15% of the people utilize about, that top 15% of the actual power. So there's a very small group up here, and that only represents about 15% of the people that actually need that much power. If you look over here, all the rest of them, all the way up to that 85% of users right here should be the M2 Mac Mini base model. They can get easily away with that. So if you fall into the category where you need the M2 Pro Mac Mini, the Mac Studio, or even the 14 and 16 inch MacBook Pros, granted, if you need to travel with them, that's a different story. But as far as power, you're up here. But really, this is how I feel, is 85% of the normal users, people that just do normal stuff, business stuff, video calls, web browsing, YouTube watching, fall into this ridiculous graph over here, which is the 85%. And I'm sticking to that. So that's how I feel. I want people to understand that I'm totally for it. All right, I know the comments are going to come in. Well, 8 gigs is not enough in 2023. That's not enough RAM. The SSD's a little bit slower, obviously, and things like that. It is. It's going to be a little bit slower for sure than if you move up a little bit to the higher end models. But that's besides the point. I mean, really, unless you're kind of doing, video editing, 4K, multiple cuts of 4K, if you have 20 or 30 tabs open, because that's going to affect RAM, I guess, and things like that, you're not going to really fall into this. You're going to be a normal user, someone that opens up maybe 5 to 10 tabs, looks at the weather, looks at some news, goes out and maybe creates a couple little graphics, and that's how people use this, and that's way more power than you need in a system like this, and it's perfect for that. So, but who shouldn't be using these? So I'm going to go through that, and then after I show you these lists of who shouldn't be buying this base model M2 Mac Mini, I'm going to show you exactly if you were going to buy RAM or disk, which is more important. All right, so who shouldn't buy this? Number one, if you have more than 12 to 15 tabs open at once, and you regularly do that, where you have tons of things going on in the background and stuff, a lot of applications open, then you maybe want to upgrade a little bit from the M2 base model. It can still handle it, but if you like speed, that's number one. Number two, if you're doing 4K video edits, and this is the key here, and you're making money from it, you're not just kind of just having fun with it. If you're having fun, buy this. If you're not, basically, then what you want to do for sure is if you're making money, spend the money on the better system. Same thing with photo processing and photo editing and stuff like that. If you're making money at it, get a better system. If you do it just for your home use or for fun, or for even YouTube where you're barely making any money, just buy the base. All right, if you're a gamer, don't buy this. If you need something to travel with, or if you don't have a really great monitor that you can hook this up to, don't buy the Mac Mini in general, not even the base. Obviously, MacBook Air is what you want. All right, so if you need more ports, let's take a look over here. So this thing comes with 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, 1 HDMI port, 2 USB-A ports, headphone jack, Ethernet, you call all right there. If you need more than that though, obviously you have a specific need, then you can go with the M2 Pro, which is going to be almost double the cost, which I'll get into in a second. It's double the cost or more than double the cost. You get 2 extra Thunderbolt 4 ports. That's about it there. I mean, obviously we'll get into performance in a second, but so if you need those ports no matter what, don't buy the base model. If you're somebody who has applications and you know you do that has high RAM or high CPU utilization on those applications and you use them all the time, no matter what they can be, don't buy the base model. But again, if you don't know that you specifically need that, then you're falling in that 85% of people that this will be perfect for. And you shouldn't buy this if your needs are very minimal, but you come from a really privileged family that gives you free money. Go for the upgrade. All right, let's take a step back now. Remember I just told you that 85% of the people can use the base model and then the other 15%, and that's all different types of Macs in general. I want to just show you some things that kind of prove it. So look at my screen over here. So even for photo editing, we know that the RAM affects this. You know, obviously we were talking about this before. RAM and also the disk is a little bit slower, correct? But look over here. If you look at this graph here, here's the Mac Mini M2 Pro, which is going to be $1299. All right, we're talking $1299 versus $599 for the base model. And so you're more than double there. Look at the performance gains. It's 4.7 times or 3.5 times, right? But that's in comparison to way down here. This is the baseline. See it way down here? That's an i7. So realistically, this is not even, you know, this might be whatever that comes out to, you know, 30%, 20% difference between these two. So you're getting between these two, 20 or 30% difference, maybe less than that even, maybe 15% in a lot of cases, but you're spending over twice as much. It's the same thing, you know, image upscaling. Look at this. These are very close up here. Here's the baseline way down here. See, Apple's using these charts in a way it shouldn't. It tricks you. Video editing, we all talk about video editing. So here, you know, obviously this is one that you might consider it because look at here. The video editing looks like it's going to be almost twice as much between these two versus, don't worry about the base down here because this is an old i7. They're trying to trick you with this 18, but this is almost double here. So you got to maybe consider with video editing, again, if you're making money only, maybe you think about the M2 Pro. And then, I mean, obviously as you keep going through this code compiling and stuff, you can see that there's going to be differences here, but not so much as double or double and a half the cost. So you got to weigh your options with the cost. All right, and finally the third thing I wanted to talk about is if you had to decide between buying an upgraded SSD for the base model, going up to 512 or 16 gigs of RAM, what should you do? 16 gigs of RAM. Let me explain. So obviously with external storage, that's number one. You can go ahead and add external storage later. It's really fast now. It works great in these systems. So that's one thing you can do. The actual memory though, the RAM, you can upgrade later, and that's the big thing. So if you look over at my system over here, take a look at this. And I'm on this system just for full disclosure, but it's the same basic theory here. So if you look over here, and I go into Activity Monitor, so open up Activity Monitor and click on Memory. See it right there? Click on Memory and go down to the bottom. You're going to see down here, physical memory, I only have 8 gigabytes here as well, so it's a very similar comparison. Memory used, 4.56, cached, 2.49. I'm not even using all my memory, right? And I have a couple things open. The swap is what you want to look at. See it down there? I have 0 bytes right now. That means it's not using any swap, basically swap memory used, and that comes from your hard drive. So if your hard drive is slower, which is on the M2 base model, and it starts using swap, you're going to get a slower speed overall for long, drawn-out tasks like video editing and stuff like that. That's where you start seeing this performance hit. So obviously with 8 gigs of memory, you're going to use more swap when you start opening up a lot of tabs and opening up a lot of different applications. The swap is going to go up, and it's going to be having to take it from the hard, it's going to be using the SSD drive then to help with the overall performance of the computer. In that case, if you have 16 gigabytes of RAM, it's going to use way less swap, right? So even on the base model, you're going to touch the hard drive, which is slower, a lot less, and it's going to use a lot less swap because you don't need as much because you're never going to reach the threshold of 16 versus 8. So overall, it's better just to get the upgraded RAM, and then every so often when you just blow everything away and you use tons of applications and tons of tabs and you start going into your swap, it's going to be a little bit slower with the base model because that disk, the SSD, is slower. It's 1.7 megabytes per 1,700 megabytes per second versus maybe 3,000 or something. But that's such a rare point when you upgrade the RAM that it's going to make almost no difference to you whatsoever. Obviously, over time though, get the RAM because it's going to make your computer last longer. We don't know what's going to happen in 2 or 3 years, but these things perform with 8 gigs like you normally would with 16 on a Windows machine. So overall, that's what I recommend for that, and I hope it helps people out. All right, so let's wrap this up. What do I think about that? I think I proved it with my ridiculous Apple graph, obviously showing you that I think that 85% of the population can get away with the M2 base without any problems whatsoever. And if you think you need it and you're not making money from something to get it back, then you don't need it because you're just fooling around. I know you like it, and I know I like it too. I also like Ferraris and Porsches, but I don't own one. At the end of the day, this gets the job done just like a Kia or a Honda or whatever you want to call it. Great cars, Toyotas. So Think of it that way, and don't spend your money. Don't give it to Apple. I don't like Apple in the way. I don't care so much about, I don't want to give them my money, but I like their products, so I will only when I need to. We'll talk to everybody soon. It's snowing here in around Chicago, so let's have a good winter. It looks like we're going to get about 6 or 7 inches of snow today. Talk to you soon. Unless you're in the summer watching this in a year from now, then you're going to think I'm crazy, but we'll talk to you soon. Peace.